I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is popping the blue pill. And I have found other places where James Corbett and I agree that I'm excited to talk about. And I found one place where we disagree. So I'm going to go into that and also talk about the Matrix, which has been a topic recently of Mathew Crawford, and some of the readers that I have been chatting about it in the comments. So I want to talk about that and then get into the idea of free will versus determinism and why that's another false dichotomy. Let's do this. A new subscriber called Mike R. has a byline that I thought was especially apropos for someone who also listens to James Corbett and Catherine Watt of the Bailiwick News. It goes, "When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous and its speaker a raving lunatic." And that's by Donald James. Another reader, Guy, alerted me to a new interview of James Corbett that is by Alexander Raskovich on realization, is what it's called. And this one is so up my alley because what he starts out talking about is anarchy. And as everyone who watches me knows, my book, How to Dismantle an Empire, is a practical guide to anarchy. It looks at what are the policies, how do we get from here to there, and all the questions that he talks about are ones that I bring up. So he looks at being an autodidact and someone who is self-taught. When Alexander says, when did you start being an autodidact? He says, well, really from birth. I think that as someone who is a volunteerist, which is the word that he uses for anarchy rather than a statist, that's how we're all born, and that we're all born with curiosity. Alexander mentions that he used the trivium method. And that's something that I talked about. I did an episode on it on my old radio show, which was Third Paradigm, at thirdparadigm.org, and looking at education and its discontents. And one of the things that I examined was the trivium method and how to identify logical fallacies and rhetorical divisives, as I call them. Now, if you go to thirdparadigm.org, it will say, forbidden, file 404. Nothing has changed in the last 10 years, so who knows why that is. I have also noticed that when Ginger Bregan and when Mathew Crawford have sent me direct emails, they went to a spam folder on the server. They didn't even make it into the junk mail. I only found them by accident clearing out some old messages. So maybe these are just coincidences. I hear that happens. James talks about being an autodidact in journalism and in video production. And he says if you go to my early videos, you'll see how far they've come. And that was really hopeful for me, since, as I said, his production values make me green with envy. So apparently he didn't start out that way. But he talks about how in journalism, he thinks it was an advantage that he didn't go to school, that he didn't start out with the kind of background that journalism students have. Now, I am often asked whether I have a degree in economics when people find out that that's what my book is about. And one of my introductory quotes is from Johann Galtung, who is the founder of Peace and Conflict Studies, who says, "I have one advantage in my life. I'm not trained as an economist. So it is so much easier to see reality. When you have to see it through the kind of crazy training these guys get, it becomes very difficult. I admire any economist who nonetheless can talk sense. There's not many of them, but it happens. And then James talks about how he was in the field of literature, and that did teach him one thing. Now, I thought that he was going to say to read, but silly me. I should have remembered that actually the purpose of university is to teach you to hate reading. What it taught him was to develop a thesis, to know what's the question that you're asking. How can you present a persuasive essay and research something in pursuit of a particular topic? That's something that I can't help but do. My younger daughter and I are similar in this way, and my oldest was just discussing this, that for us, we are obsessive. That is a hole that we just can't even allow ourselves to fall down unless we have enough time to really pursue a topic. Because once we get hold of it, it's like a bulldog hanging onto a pants leg. We cannot do anything else. And the oldest is that way about cleaning. That's where her OCD comes in. But for us, it's having that question, that mystery, that thing that we just need to solve that doesn't make sense. And as long as we are in its possession, it will not let us go. Before I get into the exciting territory of where James and I disagree, I've been talking about the Matrix with some of the readers. And this is partly because that idea of being black-pilled has come up, with Malone calling the Bragans that. And I just think that there's some questions that it raises with that idea of whether we are red-pilled or blue-pilled. So Rob, who writes Robert's Occam's Razor, he posted, "I remember reading a pretty cool point about the red and blue pills of the Matrix years ago. The point was that if you didn't take both, you didn't know the whole story. Some people who are red-pilled cannot understand why others are blue-pilled and think as if they're better than those people. But if you walked in their shoes, it would make sense, and one could see that changing conditions would wake them up too, as we're all on the same path, no better and no worse than them. This was a hard pill for me to swallow, as I felt like I was special for figuring it out. Nope, the conditions and experiences I had had opened me up to it sooner than them." So first, I just want to say how exciting it is that Rob admits that he changed his mind, because as I have other episodes that say, when was the last time you were wrong? I think that changing our minds is the most powerful force, maybe in the universe. I think I say it's the second most powerful force, but I forget right now what the first is. So I think that asking the questions and being on the same path as other people, but recognizing that we're just in different circumstances, is a really important point. And then Mathew Crawford came out with Epistemology and the Totalitarian Matrix, and he has several different points for how you begin to weaken the matrix. He says, relax so that you can take the emotion out of academic conversation. Dispel the anxiety of those who try to tell you that the others aren't worth talking with. That's also part of the illusion, and the people discouraging you from communicating are chaos agents, whether they know it or not. Be a Socratic question asker for at least a solid portion of every important conversation. Get your ducks in a row regarding facts that you would like to share. Humanize everyone in your mind. Ignore the often illusory social boundaries to engage with other human beings. They may just listen more often than you think. And then Identify those whose job it is to disrupt the conversation and reveal them, or simply have conversations outside of their control. Eventually, their controlling nature will be plain to most people. And then he says, tell me the tactics you use to dispel the matrix. So I think that both of those really exemplify how to be human, how to be looking at this from, I don't know, a purple-pilled perspective, one in which we're not feeling like we're better than someone else when we are putting ourselves in their position, and we're having conversations in which we humanize them. So this is the disagreement, which is a very small thing that I think James and I would work out if we were to actually have a conversation. But he talked in one of the episodes I listened to about what you can do about all this. And what he said was, make small changes. Try to break free from their control. Go buy your groceries from a farmer's market, or try to do something off the grid, or just go and do something that isn't going to be part of that centralized control. And I agree completely if that gives you joy. I don't think that we should be doing those kinds of things because we think they'll make a difference, or because we think that that's what we should do. I think that right now what we should focus on is being happy and doing the things that make you happy, whether they are going to the farmer's market or whether they're going shopping at someplace like Ross, as my daughter and I did this weekend. That I think we need to be helping ourselves through this and not being judgmental, which is often what I think making sacrifices leads us to be. It leads us to feel like we are better than someone else. We're recycling, we're conserving water, we're helping the homeless. And those are all these judgments that we're putting onto other people because we've taken our pleasure away. There's a meme that someone told me about that said, studies have found that those who give up their morning coffee have 50% less fucking joy in their life. And that's, I think, what we need to focus on. This is not being good. Nothing that has to do with what you eat or who you have sex with or anything that is part of your personal decisions, how often you exercise. These are not being good. We've taken personal decisions and we've put morality onto them. And none of that belongs. Your ethical decisions have nothing to do with how you make yourself happy and how you connect with other people. So I say, if it makes you happy, do it. And so for anyone who's getting away with still having a little blue pill in your life, go for it. Value it. Reality is coming to crush us all soon enough. My oldest daughter, I visited the last couple days, and she's moved from gritty Oakland, California, where her catalytic converter got stolen off the Prius 3 times, the last time after she had welded a cover onto it, so they stole the whole thing and had it towed somewhere so that they could pry that off, and that they had to build a fence because their house got broken into so many times. And now they have moved to Pleasant Hill, and true to its name, it is very pleasant. It is suburbia. It feels like a movie set. I do feel like I'm in Pleasantville. It has rolling hills and a kids playing next door at a daycare, and parks that actually belong to kids. And parents are not needing to be hyper vigilant all the time. People leave their doors unlocked. You can walk downtown through this gorgeous, scenic city hall. So I have to say, there is something to be said for suburbia. Yes, it is big box stores that are wall to wall. But people are safe and they're enjoying their lives. And honestly, isn't that what we want to make possible for everyone? Through a system of anarchy and gentrification in place, we become landed gentry who take over our communities and make them into the places that we want them to be. And I'll end with a conversation that I've been having with Cosmos agent Roger on my Substack about free will versus predetermination. I've been thinking about this since third grade. I vividly remember sitting in Catholic school in religion class when the priest came in and talked about free will and predetermination and how they could both be true. And that puzzled me for so long until I finally figured out that what we are all predetermined to be is happy. We are all inherently good, and that is our human nature. And when we are not living up to that nature, it's because of our circumstances. So free will is this way of taking the ego and turning it into God. It's this idea that your soul, the part of you that is the most important, what it is that chooses between good and evil, that you've created that yourself. And so that means that you are God. You are your own God. You created yourself. God did not create you. And therefore, you should be ashamed if you have not made good decisions, and you should be proud if you have. That's ridiculous. The most freeing sentence in A Course in Miracles is, I am as God created me. And that means that if God can only create perfect, of course I am perfect, and I'm in the situation that I have the best ability to make sense of if there is design. And if there is no design, we're all still equal. We are either the product of spirit or of nature, and either way, we did not create ourselves. The Substack version will have links and quotes from all of these, along with a bonus link to a beautifully written essay that I think really speaks to what it means to be human. And that's by Helena Fitzgerald, who writes as Grief Bacon, and her essay is called The Only Good Coffee is Bad Coffee. And to follow this up, I recommend From FOMO to JOMO, The Joy of Missing Out, and also, When Did You Stop Being Wrong? Thank you for watching.